Today on our 2015 Kia Soul, we're going to be taking a look at showing you how to install the Roadmaster Universal High-Powered Diode Wiring Kit, part number RM-152. Now to help us with our install, we're going to be using the Roadmaster 7-wire to 6-wire Flexo-Coil Kit, part number RM-146-7. Here's what our wiring looks like installed. It is going to include an umbilical cord to connect our RV to our vehicle, and the wiring is going to allow us to use our factory lights and accept the signal from our RV so that people can know whether we're going down the road with our taillights on, brake lights, and our turn signals. This is going to take away the need for the magnetic lights that you see a lot on towed vehicles, and it's going to use our factory lights, and it's going to have some diodes that are going to tap into our factory wiring, preventing any kind of feedback coming from our RV and damaging our factory wiring. Now that we know how our wiring is going to work, let's show you how to get it installed. With our base plate torqued down and everything in place, now would be a good time, if you are doing wiring, to go ahead and at least run your wires while the fascia is off, making it a little bit easier to get where we need to go. So I'm just going to take my wiring, I'm actually just going to loop it around these posts right here. Just leave it right there with a little loop so I have plenty to work with. So we're going to start routing it towards the engine. And once we get up past everything, I'm just going to come up behind my headlight here. I'm going to leave it up in the engine bay for now. With our fascia back on, I'm going to slightly pull my wire out just a little bit. And we can take our wire loom. And we're not going to need to use all of it right here, but I'm going to go ahead and cut it in half. I'm going to slide my wire loom over my wire. It's going to help protect my wire and kind of hide the color from showing through the grill there. You just want to slide it on. You can go ahead and slide it up our wire. We take a little bit of electrical tape and we secure it so it won't be sliding back and forth. Now I do want to mention you want to leave yourself a little bit of room here so we have some room to work with our wire. And we're going to want to split or separate our wires. So you just take a pair of cutters and very carefully cut in between each one of the wires. You're going to want to really try not to cut into the wire itself. And once you have a little bit separated, you should be able to grab it and separate our wire like that. You just want to give yourself a few inches so it'll be a little bit easier to work with. We're going to do that for all of our wires here. With our wires separated, we can take the boot off of our connector. I'm going to slide the wires through. For now, I'm just going to push it back as far as I can get it so it's out of the way. Now we're going to need to strip back all the ends off of each one of our wires here. Now if we look at the back of our connector here, all of our connection points are going to be labeled. So we're going to start with the very top one, which is labeled TM for trailer marker, but that's going to be our brown wire. So we can go ahead and insert it and tighten down the set screw. GD is going to be for our ground, which is the white wire. LT is going to be for our left turn, which is the yellow wire. And RT is going to be for our right turn, which is going to be our green wire here. So we're going to repeat that process, putting all of our wires in the correct connection points until we have all of them in there. So this is what it should look like once you're done. And before I put my boot back on, I'm actually just going to kind of fill this entire area up with some dielectric grease to hopefully keep out the moisture and stop corrosion from building up inside. Put some in there, and we can slide our boot back in place. I'm actually going to take some electrical tape and wrap it up and wrap the end up as well. And this is just going to keep that boot in place and hopefully help seal it up a little bit. And I'm also going to wrap the excess wires, which will help protect them and keep the color from showing through our grill here. Now we do have a bracket mounted to our base plate here that we're going to be attaching our electrical connector to. I'm just going to be taking some self-tapping screws and screwing it right into that bracket. Get one in place loosely so we can still make any kind of adjustments we need to, so we can get the other one in place. So we can start working on getting our full pole wiring to the back of our vehicle. I'm just going to take the end of it, I'm going to start routing it towards the firewall, going around all the wires and lines. And I'm actually going to drop it down right in front of my brake booster here. Just want to be careful to watch any moving parts or any heat sources so it doesn't damage your wire. Now we're going to drop it down so we can reach it once we get underneath the vehicle. Then we can pull all the excess slack out, start running it towards the back. Now here's where our wire came out, and we're going to have to route this to the back of the vehicle. Now, everybody's going to do it a little differently. Just want to mention you want to stay away from any heat sources or any moving parts like the suspension. So I'm going to go ahead and route my wire, and I'll show you how I ran it. So I went over my subframe here, started running my wire, I went underneath this cover, and I came out from under the cover right here where all my lines were, and just secured it to some factory lines, went around the fuel tank, again securing it to some of the factory lines, went over the evap canister, then I secured it to the back bumper so that my wire is right in the middle. So we're going to need to separate the wires just like we did up front. I'm just going to split the wires at the very ends, and this time we're going to take and split the wires all the way to the very center of our bumper. It's going to take a little bit of time. Just work on one wire at a time, make it a little bit easier. So we'll start with our white wire here. And we're going to need to find a piece of sheet metal because this is going to be our ground wire. So we're going to find a spot that we can attach it to. So go ahead and estimate about how much wire I need, making sure that I can still secure it and have enough room to zip tie it so I don't have wires hanging out. We'll go ahead and cut back the ends and strip the end of our wire. We can take the provided ring terminal in our kit, slide it over the end of our wire, and crimp it down. And they do provide us with a self-tapping screw. Just going to find a 5/16 nut driver, and we can secure it right there to the sheet metal. Now that we have our wires ran to the back, we need to figure out if our vehicle has combined or separated brake and turn signals. And then once we figure out which one of those they have, we need to figure out which one is our taillights, brake lights, and turn signals on the back. So I'll go ahead and run them so we can see what we have. So with the headlights on, with our taillights on, we can see that the outer ring is going to be our taillights. And if I push on the brake, we can see that bottom section of the outer ring is going to be our brake lights. Now if I keep my brakes on and I turn the turn signal on, we can see that it is a separate bulb. So now we're going to open up our hatch and remove our taillight assemblies. Now on each side, we're going to have a few screws holding the assembly in place. We'll be using a Phillips head screwdriver to remove those. We'll go ahead and remove the other ones on the other side as well. Now when you go to remove the taillight, you're going to want to pull as straight back as you can, maybe giving it a little bit of a wiggle, but there are some pins back here that hold it in place and you don't want to break those. Once we have it removed, we can go ahead and disconnect the harness. So there's going to be a tab right here, so we can just push in on that tab, pull the harness out, and set our taillight aside. So I have my headlights on, and we're going to go and check each one of these pins so we can figure out which wire corresponds with our headlight signal. So we can see that this bottom right pin, if we're looking at it with the clip on top, which is going to be our green wire with the black stripe. That's going to be our headlight signal. So we're going to need to write that down or remember that. Now you want to grab an extra set of hands or prop something on the brake and turn all of your other lights off, and we can check and see which wire is going to be for our brake signal. So it's going to be the green wire with no stripe, just right above our taillight signal. So we can write that down as well. Now you're going to want to either slide this tape up or peel it back so we have a little bit more room to work with so we can work with our wires, because we are going to be tapping into them. Now we're going to need to get our wiring up to our factory wiring here. So I'm going to take an airline tube and I'm actually going to pass it through the body, in between the bumper and the body here, so I can reach my wires and then pull it up. Now if you don't have any airline tube, you can use a coat hanger or whatever you have available. You just want something that's going to keep its shape when you start pushing and pulling on it. So my airline tube did come out. I did have to reach up in the bumper just slightly. I'm just going to come out right here. And since we're on the driver's side, we're going to want to grab our yellow and brown wires and send them up. I'm just going to take my 2 wires and I'm going to put them inside my airline tube, then come back with a little bit of electrical tape so I don't have to worry about losing them when I start pulling. So we can come back up top, start pulling our airline up, pulling all the slack out of our 2 wires. Now we're going to start with the brown wire, and that's going to be for our tail lights. And if we remember or wrote it down, that's going to be the green wire with the black stripe. You're going to want to cut this wire back a little bit from the connector so you have some room. I'm just going to cut that wire right in half, and then we're going to strip back both ends. So we're going to grab one of our diodes, and for this one you're going to want to grab the one with the yellow connector on it. So we can take our 2 blue connectors, and we're going to be crimping them on to our factory wires that we just cut. Now if we look at our diode, we're going to have 2 inputs on the inside and 1 out. The out is going to go towards our tail light socket, so we can go and plug that in. We can take the other blue connector and put it on the inside. We'll undo our yellow connector, and we're going to take and estimate about how much wire we need from our brown wire to reach. And we can cut it off and strip back the end. Now you're going to want to hold on to that excess wire that you just cut off, and we're going to strip back the end of the wire coming up and the excess wire. Now we're going to take these 2 ends and twist them together, and we're going to put them into our yellow connector and crimp it down. Then we can take it and put it into the other inside of our diode. Now the excess brown wire that we just attached is going to have to go back down through our bumper, and it's going to cross over to our passenger side. Now it looks like we're going to be just shy of reaching everything. So I'm going to take some extra brown wire that I have and attach it together. And if you need some extra wire, you can pick some up on our website using part number 16-1-1, and that's going to be 16 gauge wire by the foot. So I'm going to go ahead and strip back both ends of this wire. And since it's going to be on the outside, or more or less on the outside of my vehicle, I'm going to be using a heat shrink butt connector to put them together. Now if you need to pick up some of these, you can use part number DW05744-5, and that'll be for a pack of 5 of them. I'm using a heat gun to shrink down my connector here. Just want to mention, if you are using an open flame, such as a torch or a lighter, you want to be extra careful not to burn or char the wires or the connector itself. So now we can focus on our yellow wire here. Now this is going to be for our left turn signal, but it's also going to be for our brake signal. So even though we have a separate wire and it goes to a separate signal, we're going to be using the brake signal wire, which then in turn is going to become our towed vehicle's turn signal as well. So we're going to be grabbing the green wire, and we're going to do the same thing. Cut it in half and strip back both ends. Then we can grab one of the remaining diodes. Grab 2 of the spade connectors, and we're going to crimp them onto the 2 wires we just stripped. I'm going to go ahead and again, making sure that the outside of my diode is going towards the tail light socket. We can plug that in, plug the other one into the inside. And we can grab, and again, estimate about how much wire we're going to need. It never hurts to give yourself a little bit extra for flexibility. And we can cut back the end and strip it back. And we're going to be crimping that last spade connector onto the yellow wire. And we can plug it back into the inside of our diode. Now we're just going to need to work on getting this brown wire back through the bottom again to meet up at the bottom. So I'm going to feed my airline tube back down through the bumper and just reverse the process that we did earlier and pull my wire down. Once you have your wire down, you're going to pull all the excess slack out. With the left side done, we can go ahead and plug our connector back in. Make sure that we have room and where we're going to put our diodes. And what I like to do is on the back of our diodes here, we're going to have some double-sided foam tape. You can take the backing off of them. And you stick them together. Just want to make sure that your wires are going to be out of the way. And then we can put our taillight back in place. And then we can put all of our fasteners holding everything down. So we can go ahead and pull our passenger side taillight out. And again, remove the clip, holding the connector in place. We can set this aside for right now. Now we're in the passenger side. We're going to need to verify which wire is for our taillight signal and which one is for our brake signal. So I have the taillights on right now. And if I check each one of my pins, I'm only getting a signal at the bottom right if I have the clip on top, which is going to correspond with the brown wire with the black stripe. So we can go ahead and remember or write that down. Now with the tail lights off and the brakes on the driver's side it was that green wire, so we can go ahead and double check to make sure it is. And then none of the other pins are getting a signal as well. So again, our brake wire is going to be the green wire, and our taillight signal is going to be the brown wire with the black stripe on the right side. I'm going to take that same airline tube. I'm going to use the same method, just on the right side here, feed it down, grab my green and brown wire this time, and start pulling it up. I'm going to take the green and brown wire that we have left and attach it to my airline tube and start pulling it up. Now you want to pull all the excess slack out. Make sure that you don't have anything bundled up underneath that may be getting caught. So we're going to start with our taillight signal, which is going to be our brown wire, and the brown and black striped wire on the factory harness. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that in half, strip it back, and grab one of the diodes. Now that we have those two connected, go ahead and take our last spade connector, estimate about how much we need, cut it back, and crimp on our last spade connector. And the brown wire is going to be for our taillight signal, which will be going into this diode with the brown and black striped wire. We're going to move on to our green wire, which is going to be for our turn signal and brake signal, which is going to be our green wire coming out of our connector on our factory harness. So again, cut the wire in half, strip back both ends, and crimp on a spade connector on each one. Finally, our last spade connector is going to go onto the green wire. We'll crimp it into place. Let's be going to the in terminal on our brake signal wire. So I'm going to take the backing off, the double-sided tape on our diodes, stick them together, and grab our tail light and put it back in place. Just want to line up the pins. I'm going to put our tail light back in and secure it down. Before we test everything and make sure everything is working, just want to make sure that our lights are working properly when we're not hooked up to our motorhome or flat towing our vehicle. So if I push on the brakes, you can see that my brake lights still come on. Turn on the tail lights, my tail lights still work, and both my turn signals are still going to work like normal. And even if I have my brakes on and turn the turn signals on, everything works the way it should. We can take the coiled wire that comes in our kit, plug it into the front of our vehicle, the other end's plugged into the back of our motorhome. Once our wiring is installed, you're going to want to hook up to your motorhome and make sure that all your functions are working properly, being your tail lights, turn signals, and brake lights, and make sure that your brake light is not canceling out your turn signal. And that'll finish up our look at the Roadmaster Universal High Power Diode Wiring Kit, part number RM-152 on our 2015 Kia Soul.
Thanks for watching. Click the link in our description below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com. And leave us a comment if you have any questions.